just going to go off camera.
We're live.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I will call this meeting to order. This is the Housing Commission meeting for Thursday, April 1. Annette, would you be so kind as to call the roll?
Yes, I will. Casey?
Here, this is Casey Kefchen, attending remotely from East Lansing, Michigan in Ingham County.
Thank you. Irene?
Irene McDonald Cahill, attending remotely from Virginia Avenue in East Lansing, Ingham County. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, Jennifer Ferguson. I am remotely in East Lansing, Michigan and Ingham County.
Great. Thank you. Carrie?
This is Carrie Freeman. I'm attending remotely from 3854 Cara Lane in East Lansing. That's Clinton County, Michigan.
Thank you. And Larry?
I am participating remotely. I live in East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County. I am currently in, excuse me, Tucson, Arizona, Pima County, Arizona.
Thank you. I don't see Janelle. Right. Alan?
Present, Alan Wood, attending remotely from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Thank you, and that completes the roll call for this evening.
Okay, thanks, Annette. So we've got an agenda that was sent ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Irene motions to approve the agenda.
Thank you. And do I have a
Larry,
second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All right, I'll just pause in case you're on mute. So I didn't think anybody would object, but okay. Motion passes. We've got an approved agenda. We'll move on to 1.3, approval of our minutes. The minutes you'll find at 4.1 from March 4th, 2020. Does anybody have any adjustments that they'd like to make to the minutes?
No.
All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from March 4th, 2021?
Irene will motion to approve the minutes from March 4th, 2021.
All right, we have a motion from Irene to approve the March 4th minutes. Do I have a second?
Second, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. All right, the minutes from March 4th, 2021 are approved. We'll move on to item number 2, commissioner concerns. Does anybody have anything they want to share concerns wise in general? And I'll give you a 10-second pause.
This is Larry. I have a question for Annette, and that is, what is the status of the housing study?
Yes, sure. It is, we have looked at first draft of the housing study. We have given some feedback to our consultant, more like things that, corrections and some changes on data, and referred her for some cleanup work. I anticipate that we'll have a full first draft that will be forwarded to the City Council at an April meeting, and I don't have the exact date, but it's mid-April meeting.
Okay.
And I
Great, thank you.
anticipate after it goes to council, it will get forwarded on to you all.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner concerns? All right, hearing none, let's move on to communications from citizens. Earlier in the week, and I think we got a follow-up today, we heard from Ann Hill with a number of concerns and questions. Hopefully you had a chance to read through that email. She had some questions about assessments and whether the pop-up tax applied to certain properties, most notably some rental properties around town, as well as some questions about some of the Chesterfield Hills neighborhood work that's going on and rental overlay districts. Now, if I'm not mistaken, a little while ago, Annette forwarded me and everybody else some information responding to Ann's questions about assessment. So there's a response in our emails on that, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Annette, I'll give you an opportunity to fill us in on that. You sent that on to Ann as well. And as for the other items, there are a number of other things that she, like I said, overlay districts and Chesterfield Hills information that I think city staff will be able to respond directly to her. But right at the top, I noticed Ann requested some extra time to speak to the commission. Typically when we get to public comment, which we will in a moment, we hear a motion that we keep public comment to like 2 minutes per person. So if I would entertain a motion to, if the commission, other commissioners are comfortable to extend that amount of time to 5 minutes in this case, since we have that request.
This is Irene. I'd like to keep it what it is now, the 2 minutes, and that anytime anyone wants to talk to us, they can always ask us for an extension, because we don't really have that many agenda items and we always have enough time for people. So I think we'll always be courteous. So I'd like to leave it as it's been. I don't see any reason to extend it, because, just past practice. I don't know. That's just what I think. Why should it be 5 minutes? And sometimes people might just talk for 5 minutes when it isn't really necessary.
So in this, right now I'm just talking about today because Ann requested it for
just
today.
about today. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, because we have to do that motion every meeting anyway. So it
Okay.
just seemed like, well, if Ann's asked to speak to us today for 5 minutes instead of 2,
Oh, yeah,
may as well for
That's fine.
today
that's fine.
do 5, since we have somebody who'd like to talk to us for 5.
Okay,
So just to clarify, yeah, I think, next meeting, if it's all the same and nobody asks for more, I think we can go back to the regular time.
sure. Okay, that's reasonable. See, because she asked. So that's
Mhm.
just what I'm saying, really. Thank you.
Anybody else have thoughts? Oh, and one point of clarification, just, Annette, is Ann here virtually?
I will say that we have, this is a good point, if I may, at this point. We currently have 3 attendees that are listening, watching our meeting. I'm going to, I think I know which, Janelle also just sent me an email that she has gotten access to the meeting through her phone. And I'm going to, at this point, confirm this is her. I was thinking I could move her over to a panelist, but it isn't letting me do that right now. So I am just going to, her number ends in 980, and I'm just going to open it up so that she will be able to join us and speak. Janelle Cannon, one of our other new housing commissioners, even though you might not see her here on our Hollywood Squares grid. So I'm opening that up. And then we have two other, there we go. We see her as 980 on our grid. Janelle, we have you with us, we believe.
I think she's on mute.
You are
Yeah, she's-
muted, Janelle. I believe if you hit *6 on your phone, it will unmute. And then at any point, if you want to comment, you'll be able to chime in. And
Well, and it would be great if she could do the roll call thing where she says, you know,
she's here.
yeah, that her name and where she's calling from and that she's attending virtually.
Well, in the meantime, welcome to Janelle. Zoom is just tremendous.
What's that, Irene?
I said Zoom is really tremendous.
Hey, it beats old fashioned conference calling, right? I think maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, kind of.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so where are we at the moment? What are we doing?
I was waiting for Janelle for a second, but it looks like we've maybe lost her. So let's continue on with our public comment business, and you know, hopefully if we can get Janelle on, we can. So Larry, I thought I saw a comment on your face, but maybe I was just making that up.
Well, no, based on Annette's comment, I would then move that we expand the 2-minute public comment to 5 minutes public comment today, April 1st, 2021, for the April 1st, 2021 meeting of the Housing Commission only.
Pursuant to MCL
Yeah,
15.263 subsection 1, right, Larry?
absolutely. Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
It's a beautiful motion, Larry. Do I have a second?
Irene will second that.
All right, I got a second from Irene. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. All right, great. Thank you, Larry and Irene. We've got a nice motion there. All right, well, let me make sure that we're there, but I believe we're ready to open it up for public comment unless are there any other communications from citizens that are in written form that we want to know about, Annette, before we go on to the people who are here virtually?
No, that is all of the written public comment that I received. I did forward on to you a response from David Lee, our city assessor, for some of the questions in Ann's correspondence. And I will post that.
Oh, great. Janelle, is that you?
This is the elusive Janelle, yes. I'm so sorry for all my technical difficulties.
No
but I'm
worries.
here now.
All right. So for our record, for our official business, would you be so kind as to, since you're one of our commission members, when we do a roll call to let folks know that you're here, you say your name, and then you say that you're attending virtually, and then you say from the city and county in which you live. So
Yes.
if you could do that, that would be great.
I'm Janelle Cannon, attending virtually from East Lansing in the county of Ingham.
Beautiful. Thank you, Janelle. All right. We've got a full panel here. So we're ready, I believe, Annette, to hear from the public.
Yes, okay, thank you. We do have two attendees on the line with us this evening. And I am going to call upon the first attendee whose number ends in 534. Number 534, you can now speak to the commission if you so desire. If you do not want to speak at this time, you can just tell us pass. If you do, if you would please introduce yourself, and you may have to hit *6 on your phone in order to speak to us. And that's caller ending in 534.
Hello? Hello?
Hello,
Hi, this
you're
is Ann
on.
Hill at Thank you. This is Ann Hill at 685 Buteo. I wanted to thank the commission and also Annette for receiving my correspondence, my written correspondence, and Annette, especially to you for forwarding it on to David Lee. And I appreciate very much his detailed MCL notations on there so that I can go look those up. Not that I dispute them, that's not the case at all. I'm just trying to get a better understanding because as I look at the expenses for the city and look at the folks who end up paying those, we do seem to have quite an opportunity for those who either have legal access or the state law apparently allows certain transactions to avoid having their properties uncapped, if you will. So I am concerned, bottom line, and I think I mentioned these at the bottom of my letter, that I'm very concerned that the city of East Lansing, that we're becoming less and less accessible for people who don't have a very good income. So if we're talking low to moderate, we're making it more difficult as time goes on for people with low to moderate incomes to move into our community. And I do think that we are becoming much more expensive as a whole. So I will go ahead and digest this information and we'll continue on with my own personal study and reference those MCLs. And I do hope that my extra treatment wasn't an excessive burden on the commission. I do apologize for that, but I thank you for allowing me to take the extra time.
No problem at all, Ann, and I think you've got like 3 minutes to spare, so as it turns out anyway. So yeah, please keep us in the loop as you go through this process, and we'd be happy to have you back. So have a good evening.
Thank
All
you.
right. And Annette, you said there was somebody else on the line as well?
Yes. One moment, please. I have, sorry, my number's here. I have another caller on the line and the number ends in 963. Caller 963, I am moving you over to allow to speak to the commission if you would like to. Please give your name if you would. Thanks.
Hi, this is Alice Dreger. Thanks to you all for volunteering this work, and welcome to Janelle. It's exciting to have you on this commission. Just a couple of comments. Public comment, I heard Commissioner McDonald Cahill suggest that you could give some people 2 minutes and then give other people longer time. Under the Open Meetings Act, you have to treat all public commentators equally in terms of the amount of time that they are allowed. It does not seem to me that doing 5 minutes per call is going to change your lives in terms of your volunteer service. Typically there's 1 to 2 people, if that, on any of these calls. So at most that will add an extra 6 minutes to the meeting over a 2-minute call. And my own personal feeling is that engagement from the public is always a good thing. So I would encourage you to follow the lead of virtually every other board and commission in the city of East Lansing and simply pass a binding resolution that stays until you change it, that you'll accept public comment for 5 minutes at a time. I think literally every other group has now done that, as far as I can think of in terms of the ones I've been attending. I did have a question about something attached to the agenda, and you perhaps could answer it later when you get to that item on the agenda. But on the page that shows recent projects with a residential component, which I think is under item 5.2 on your agenda, I don't understand the material provided on the second page. So on the page, recent projects with a residential component, it shows, for example, that Landmark has 273 units, but occupancy for 262. I think that number must be wrong. The other numbers look right to me, but I'm thinking that number is missing it's got the wrong first number, I think. And then secondly, sorry, my computer's being a little slow to pull up the rest of your agenda. With regard to the other information with regard to class 1 through class 6 licenses, that is on page, I believe, 3 of the attachment for that same agenda item for item 5.2. I don't understand what I'm looking at in the columns because it has numbers, for example, for class 1 that says 22, 22, 22. On the bottom, it has 2 numbers for class 6, and I'm just not clear what that table is supposed to be representing in terms of what the columns are meant to be showing us. So I was hoping that you could explain that when you get to that item. And then finally, I wanted to bring your attention to 2 things. One is, perhaps you've already discussed it, but the rule at MSU that's going to start requiring sophomores to live on seems like something that the Housing Commission might want to pay attention to. As from the point of view of somebody who's a homeowner and a neighborhood leader in a neighborhood that has a mixed populace in terms of students and long-term residents, this is something of a concern, but also a hope in terms of what could change with this new rule. I will say that MSU is planning to allow exceptions for sophomores who live in fraternities, sororities, and co-ops. And the irony in that is that those are the houses that pay the least taxes per person and cause the most trouble, use up the most services per person in terms of police and fire. So I do think that that's something worth keeping an eye on with regard to the Housing Commission's concerns about housing. And then secondly, the Planning Commission is wrapping up its work on the new form-based code, the Avenue Form District, which would cover a large swath of the most densely populated part of East Lansing. This has serious implications for housing, so I'm hoping that the Housing Commission will take a really careful look at it and be thinking about what it means. It appears to me likely that the passing of the form-based code will cause almost every structure in that entire area to become non-conforming, and that has implications in particular where housing is concerned. So I hope that you all will pay attention to that and use your good insights in terms of advising City Council on that. That's all. You can turn me off, Annette. Thanks for your service.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Hold on, let me make sure I get the right number. Sorry.
Before we move on, could I get clarification? Our last speaker, Alice Strager, she made some reference to a major activity of City Council looking at some area of the city, and I was not familiar with that, and I didn't catch exactly what she said. Do you have any? Do you have like a 30-second clarification in that, or Casey or anybody? Because I missed some of that, and I didn't want to interrupt her at the moment.
Annette, do you want to go with that?
I mean, just a 30-second, you know.
A thumbnail on the form-based code.
Yeah,
right. The Planning Commission, planning staff and Planning Commission, I know are working on finalizing an form-based code that they will roll out to City Council. I don't have those dates right with me, but I certainly can get that information to you all. Yeah. And then from there, I presume it probably will be further discussed at public meetings. I don't know if council intended to forward it to us. I hadn't made that inquiry. But once it comes to them, I'm sure that will be shared with others broadly.
Okay, so the term that you're using is form-based code, FORM based code?
Yes.
Okay, that's a term I'm not familiar with, so.
And then didn't we have a presentation to us on this about a year ago, I thought?
You know, we did. It's probably been almost 2 years ago now, because this past year, right, has just been
5 years long or something.
So I certainly could get you some more information, and what I will do tomorrow also is send you some links to some information that I believe is on our website. I haven't looked recently, but last I knew there was some information on the website, and I think that'd be a great way to get familiarized with that, and we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah, because I maybe I missed the meeting, but I don't remember seeing that in the last 2 years, so. Yeah, I'll take a look. I can, you know, but anything you can send me would be helpful. Thanks. That's all I want to, you know, let's move on.
This is Irene. Annette, remember we were invited to listen to the presentation of the woman about form-based code. And a lot of
Yeah.
us
But it
did
wasn't
that.
our meeting, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
it wasn't our
Irene?
meeting. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe I'm just
Well,
getting jumbled up. And I honestly can't remember was it in person, Irene, or was it online?
It was virtual online.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I thought maybe
Yeah.
it was within the last year.
Okay, maybe
It was
But-
only a few months, well, probably 5
Okay.
months at this point, but
But again, this year feels like 5 years, so you could tell me anything almost,
Exactly.
and I would believe it about when it was. So yeah, if it's virtual, Larry, that'd be a great
yeah,
way to get a
Mhm.
great primer on it. If we could just
Yeah. Well,
if we
I
can pull it up
appreciate
and
that.
watch it.
yeah. I feel a little embarrassed because everybody else seems to know what this is except me. So I apologize for my ignorance, but I will make up for it.
Maybe you have a cool life where you have more fun stuff to do than to watch such things. No,
From
no,
your-
I'm just kidding.
From
I'm
your
just-
lips to God's ears. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
And Annette, if the meeting was recorded, that meeting, would you still have the recording to send to us? Link?
Yeah, I will look into that for sure. I will find out any information we have available, and I will send it all out to all of you as a group.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Annette.
Thank you.
This is Dana. May I make a comment?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Dana.
Hi. Hi. I just wanted to, we have 3 new commissioners. Is that right today?
2.
2 new commissioners. I just wanted to welcome you all. This is a good group. I learned good stuff, and just feel free to get comfortable and ask questions and let us know what you're thinking about too, but just welcome.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Let's see. Okay, so that's items under 3. I think we're ready unless there's any, look, I'll make sure there isn't anything else related to the public comment section, from anything else from commissioners that you want to talk about before we move on to old business. Okay, so let's move on to old business. We have an update on the Chesterfield Hills conversion strategies. Do we have something on that from you, Annette, then?
Yes, I do have. Hold on one moment. I am going to share my screen briefly with you all. Okay. And I'm hoping that you all see a document that says Agenda Item Report. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, this is what you all had seen on the online and in your packet, just kind of a brief update. I know that we've spoken with you all regarding the Chesterfield Hills rental conversion program in the past. And I just really I'll be brief on this because I know we've gone into some detail already, and you've had presentations from the executive director of Capital Area Housing Partnerships, where they had talked about some of the strategies that we could consider in kind of making hopefully the best use of this $300,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you start talking about buying houses, is not a lot of money, goes fast. So we want to be able to use that money, in the best ways possible and get the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak. So since we had last spoken about this and we had been to city council, staff then also had met with some representatives from the Historic District Commission. All of the homes in this area would be in the Historic District area, and we just wanted to get feedback from them and kind of a heads up on things that they may want us to think about, and connect them also with Raleigh from Capital Area Housing Partnerships, which they have worked together in the past. When I'll say CAP for shorter, when CAP has purchased or helped with purchases of other homes or rehab work on homes that are in the historic district. So they were familiar with kind of the process when someone does want to make changes to the exterior of a home that is in the historic district. You know, the interior would not be a concern. Homeowners can do as they wish on the interior of these homes, but the exterior has to meet criteria of the Historic District Commission. So that was helpful dialogue. And then the other group that we spent some time with were residents who live in the area of Chesterfield Hills. And we took some time to listen to them. You know, they're the ones that know their neighborhood the best, and get some feedback from them. And out of those sessions, a few other things came up that we felt we really needed to bring to council and get some direction from them. And that's what I'll share with you this evening. And that really has to do with these 3 questions on the screen here. Should staff explore creating a program strategy that allows for the transfer of rental licenses from one property to another within the city? Should staff update the program parameters to give priority to low to moderate income purchasers? And should the program parameters focus on a specific time for an owner occupied deed restriction? So I'll kind of start maybe with that last question. Right now, many of the homes, when they're deed restricted, are deed restricted for up to 30 years, meaning they can't become a rental property for that period of time. When there's rehab money used, some of the other programs, monies that are used for those. So we wanted to bring that up because we had kind of gotten different feedback from different folks. So council discussed that a bit, and I think there was some question and some leeway on that, and we'll, as we get closer, probably work through that, but it will be a certain time frame, certainly, that I believe properties will be deed restricted. Now, all of the properties in the Chesterfield Hills area are also in a rental restriction overlay district, and they are in what's called an R01 overlay district, meaning any property that doesn't already have a rental license would not be able to apply for a rental license. So there is some kind of, I guess, already things in place there that will, for now anyway, make it so that these homes hopefully would stay owner occupied. But since the intent of this $300,000 really was to convert owner rentals to owner occupied, I think a deed restriction is carrying through the intent of that development agreement. I'm sharing with you now, I hope, a map of the area. So any of you that might be new to the commission or didn't have a chance to take a look at this or just need a refresher, this is the area that we're talking about, the Chesterfield Hills neighborhood, which is just north of Michigan Avenue. So across from campus there, like if you're familiar with where Brody is. And then Harrison Road on one side is kind of the parameter. And then on the other side is kind of just ends there because it gets close to Brandor area, but Oak Ridge, the Knolls, Glenmore, Hillcrest Village area is the other side. And then Grand River, for the most part, being the northern border. There are a few properties on the north side of Grand River that are in Glencairn neighborhood that are included in this area that we are to be working within. So I just wanted to point that out. We keep referring to this as the Chesterfield neighborhood. There are just a few properties that are in the Glencairn area, technically. So the properties that are colored here are rental licenses. There's a legend there. So the properties that are baby blue are class 4, and then the yellow properties, which I think we're down to 1, is class 3. The properties that we're going to be looking at to convert by the development agreement have to be a class 3 or a class 4. So I just wanted to share the map to give you a general sense of which part of town. And then back to our questions, as far as the, should priority be given to low to moderate income purchasers? Council did have some discussion around that, although I think everybody likes this and would want to kind of give some priority to that. We kind of need to see what the market, how the market will go. And there was some discussion of, you know, that particular part of the neighborhood, homes do sell at a pretty, not the lower priced, I guess, homes in East Lansing. So that is maybe questionable, and we'll do what we can. And then I think the item that had the most discussion, and I had provided the link to the council meeting if you wanted to hear the discussion, is should we as staff explore creating a way to transfer rental licenses? So this is something that's been discussed in the past. I'm going to just kind of quickly here on the screen, sorry. Some of the pros and cons of doing this, we took a look at. You know, some of the pros is that we might be able to create some more funds through the economics of this if we were able to eliminate or extinguish a license without having to have that be a part of the sale price. So if that license was transferred to another property, that value would no longer be with that home. So there may be some more funds then that would be able to be freed up for use. There's been interest expressed to some of the folks that live in the area that they, as landlords, might be interested in doing that, transferring licenses. We have not talked directly with a landlord about this as staff, at least not in recent years. There were discussions. This is a concept that's been talked about since 1999. And there were some discussions about 10 years ago with a landlord in the area, but I don't believe any staff, to my knowledge, has had a conversation with them at this point. So, you know, we would certainly need to look into that. And neighborhood residents have definitely expressed interest in us looking at this. So the cons, certainly we can work through these. Some maybe stopping points, but we need to find out. So the biggest one would be the legal policy issue. How can those licenses be transferred legally? What mechanism can be put in place? Is there a mechanism that can be put in place that allows for that kind of transfer of licenses? If so, clearly that's going to be an ordinance change, and we would have to go through the zoning code to make those ordinance changes and garner, I think, significant community input about that type of scenario. Especially from the receiver neighborhood. So, you know, there's been some thought, well, if the receiving house was still within the Chesterfield neighborhood, but in what's commonly called the Delta Triangle, it's that part farther east of Chesterfield, that's really all student rental except for a few properties at this point. You know, you wouldn't be moving it to necessarily another neighborhood. It would still be in that Chesterfield area. And would that be something that would be maybe easier to do? So we'd have to look into that. So it's going to take, if we go this route, we had explained it'll certainly take some more time. We're going to need some help from our city attorneys and work through it. And I know Dana's with us this evening, so perhaps you know, she may have input also that she wants to share with you, but I think council was pretty clear in letting us know that they definitely want us as staff to pursue this and are willing to step back for a little bit and take that time. The money will be there and move ahead. So I wanted to share that with you all, that's kind of the point that we are at with this particular project at this time. And I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
So I do have a burning question. Why is a local government unit entering the real estate trade?
Yep, we as the local government don't really want to. So Alan, what happened is the city does have $300,000 set aside that was a result of a development agreement that was made. I don't have the year in front of me, but it was a long time ago. It was over 10 years ago, probably 15. And so we have this money, that's the purpose for it. So what we are trying to do is just find a way and a mechanism to fulfill that, use that money as the development agreement was set. We would be working with, in an earlier iterations and presentations, we had a presentation from Capital Area Housing Partnerships, and they're the nonprofit housing group in mid-Michigan or in our area here. And we would be having them administer these strategies that we'd kind of set aside and presented to council for consideration. So that is kind of how we found ourselves here in this position doing this.
And what was the kind of the end goal? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut whoever off there.
This is Janelle. Can you hear me?
Yes, Janelle, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to join the Housing Commission because my primary concern is for people to have options in housing. And we're very limited, in my opinion, here in East Lansing. And what we're not talking about as a society is what kind of housing you need as you age. And I can tell you, you don't know what you need until you need it. And when you retire and you're not getting that paycheck every 2 weeks and you're living on Social Security, and if you're lucky, if you have a pension, most people do not. The state has not paid a pension since 1997. If you've been lucky in the stock market, maybe you might have some resources to draw on there. But when you become older and you can no longer keep up your 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house, and you may have your house paid off, but I was always amazed at the number of people who didn't realize that once you had your house paid off, you still have to pay property taxes. And when one of you passes on and now your resources are reduced significantly, maintaining that big family home is no longer an option. So where do you go? And especially, where do you go if you need a hip replaced or you've broken your leg and you've got a cast on for 8 weeks, which I experienced, by the way. You look for somewhere to rent or to downsize to a smaller home, a more cottage type home. Here in East Lansing, one of the things that disturbed me greatly was when they started refurbishing downtown and bringing up the new projects, they disregarded universal design. Architects are now calling it flexible design, where you have entryway that is accessible and a bathroom that's accessible. And when I heard about this Chesterfield project, I thought, aha, here's a chance for the city to set an example as we look at the housing stock here in East Lansing. And when you're talking about refurbishing houses, it's not just older people that need an accessible entryway. There are a significant amount of students here at MSU that are wheelchair users or use other mobility aids to get around. And I just feel so passionate about this. Also, families who find that they have a parent who is aging out of their home, but the family doesn't have the $4,000 to $8,000 you need to pay for assisted living. Medicare doesn't pay for that, by the way. That's all out of pocket. And to qualify for Medicaid, you have to spend down to your last $2,000 in order to qualify for Medicaid. And when you pass on, the state recoups the cost of your Medicaid by taking your home. So as a society, we're not looking at this. We're not looking when we've got 10,000 people every day until 2035 turning 65. Those are the demographics. The fastest growing demographic right now are people age 80 and over. And where are we going to live? I don't know if any of you have had a chance to visit the assisted living facilities around here. They look nice. They're very expensive. And there is no state regulation over assisted living. Assisted living is a marketing tool. It's not governed by any state statute. If you have a parent in there and you're being charged every time someone gives them a shower, but you know they're not getting a shower, you have no recourse. You have nowhere to go. So housing is going to become an increasing concern here in our area. And I just want us to be as creative as and imaginative as possible when it comes to affordable housing for lower and middle income households, not just for older people, but for younger people. I just read an article on how less than half of millennials are able to buy a home right now. So I'd like to put that on the table for the Chesterfield development. If we could find a pocket of money to, or even change the statute, the ordinance that says when these homes are rehabbed, that one entrance and one bathroom is accessible. And that's what I'd like to put on the table. Thank you.
Kelsey, it's Irene. Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I'd like to support what Janelle just said. That's very good. And I was myself disappointed that we didn't have, the appropriate housing for seniors, because I thought that whole project was going to be that, and would have been city staff that should have pushed that through. I don't want to be blaming anyone, but that would have been the opportunity. But I am on the Capital Area Housing Partnership Board, Janelle. And with that is, with any new houses that are built, they put a ramp in to the house on the side door of the house, as well as, so you can come in by a ramp, which is accessible for everybody, or in the front steps. And that's one of the attractions of that. And so if the housing partnership is involved and they're going to rehab any of these houses, I would think that that's going to happen. But yes, I think you're on the right track. But actually, every house that's built should have some kind of accessibility into it. Like, I mean, in the house I live in, I told my husband I was not moving unless we had a driveway that was that sloped, and also there was no steps into the back door, because I grew up with, my dad had strokes when I was young, and after a while, his older friends couldn't even visit because they couldn't get in or out of the house the right way. So yeah, it's something for all of us, because anything could happen anytime. Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alan, I think you had a follow-up question about the general nature of this program. And I guess two things. One, I can't remember if it was our February meeting or our January meeting. We had a presentation from the Capital Area Housing Authority. So they did a PowerPoint for us. So it might be
I went back and
helpful
watched
for you
it.
to like, if you want to dig deeper to watch that. Fortunately, because we're doing Zoom, it's now accessible. Like,
Yeah, I watched it this afternoon.
oh, you did? Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, but if I'm understanding correctly, the goal of that program would be to eliminate what is currently a rental and convert it to single family, lowering the population of rentals.
That's how I understand it. Annette, do you understand it differently?
It seems a bit concerning to me if we're systematically eliminating rental properties.
But sure,
Well,
but
as the person who pays rent,
so would you propose that like the city shouldn't spend the money then? I guess, Alan?
I don't. I would look forward to figuring out a solution. I certainly don't have one, or think that any individual solution that I may have may be the absolute 100% correct answer. But I think we could potentially come to an answer. I've never heard of a city, specifically buying houses to stop them from being rentals. It just seems a bit concerning.
But you know that the money isn't like, I mean, it's passing through the city, but it's not like tax dollars or something.
What was the origin of the funds?
It's from the developer, right, Annette?
That'd be correct. Yeah. And Alan, I can send you some information about it too, but it's from the developer. I don't have it all in front of me now, but it was when apartments on Michigan Avenue were built. It's 1151, I think, East Michigan Avenue. Now I remember everything by address, not name. But so it's a nice looking brick building over there. When that developer developed the apartment complex, a part of all of the development agreement was to, they actually were to eliminate a certain number of rental licenses in the Chesterfield neighborhood. And some of them they did. There was a certain number, and depending on how many they eliminated and how many were left, there would be this potentially money left at the end. And that's kind of where we ended up at this point. Some of the properties, as I recall, they did extinguish the rental licenses and rehab the homes and sold them, and they're owner occupied, and but not the total number they agreed to. And so this is the money, cash actually, that is left over from that development agreement. And right in the agreement, it specifies how it's to be used.
Alan, I'd like to understand what concerns you about reducing the rentals in the area. This is Janelle.
Hi, Janelle. Sure. Well, I mean, if the market conditions were such that it was not suitable to rent property out, and it actually ebbs and flows as demand does, I don't see any problem whatsoever. But I haven't seen it where it is a guiding principle of governing body to influence the market in such directions.
Well, maybe a little bit more context. One of the things that I have done recently was I chaired the housing task force for the age-friendly communities project here in East Lansing. And an overarching theme is concern about the general housing stock in the area. Many of those houses, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but aren't they, many of them, student rentals in the Chesterfield area?
So I can address that. So in the Chesterfield neighborhood, I think there's 19 properties that we are talking about that are licensed rental property. As far as who is in them, I don't know for sure. I'm certain there's some students. I don't know if they are all occupied by students.
Well,
it's kind of an
the rent, the rent for homes is way out of line as opposed to what you'd be paying for a mortgage, which is why those, what's the high rise that I'm thinking of there in downtown East Lansing. Newman Loft. That's why they're not renting, because the rents are so high. I think a studio starts out at like $1,400 a month.
So that we have time to line up tools and such.
And you know, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment here in the only independent living private pay apartment building in East Lansing that I'm aware of. And our rent has gone up 5% in 5 years. And there's no incentive for the owners to do anything to maintain their asset. And, you know, that's the rub, especially when you have owners who aren't necessarily in the area. And then your housing stock deteriorates, and pretty soon you've got a mess on your hands.
I think you and I are saying the complete same thing, but they can charge that price because there's not a lot of competition, because we've artificially capped the number of rentals. So you can't just add new rentals to add competition to lower price.
Let me just make a comment on that. That's not completely true. There are segments of the city that are through what's called an overlay. There are parts of the city that it's prohibited to rent to provide rental. Someone else talking? Am I here? Hello? I don't know. Do I have the floor or not?
You do. I think
You do. I
someone.
think somebody was not on mute, but I
Yeah.
think everybody's
Oh,
muted now.
okay.
Sorry about
No,
that.
I was
Larry.
just going to say that, you know, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, you know, East Lansing is unique community, at least in this area. It is not unique in terms of what goes on in college towns across the nation. So this phenomena is fairly general across the country, where there's always a pull and tug or a conflict, and then maybe that's too strong a word, but maybe not, between traditional homeowners and investors and so on who own rental properties for students, and the aims of the two different groups are not always consistent. But I was going to say that the fact that this housing commission exists gives proof to the fact that there are areas in the city of East Lansing in which new rental housing can occur, because although there are some areas in which rentals are prohibited through this idea of a rental or of an overlay district, where that has been decided presumably through the influence of the homeowners in that area. But there are plenty of areas outside of that in which a property owner may petition this committee or this commission, fill out a bunch of forms, go through the city and make sure that their property meets code. And unless there is some intrinsic reason why that rental license should not be granted, they are granted a rental license. And at least on the short period that I've been on this commission, we have approved the, I guess it's the request for a rental license, which ends up going to city council, and it's usually rubber stamped. But we have approved a bunch of new rental licenses. So it's not exactly true that the city is trying not to prevent or prohibit new rental licenses, but this Chesterfield Hills project does, I think, encapsulate some of the ideas that some families who reside in single-family housing in East Lansing often are not completely in favor of having rental housing, particularly rental housing that are occupied by students in their neighborhood. And so this, and in the past, there have been efforts to prohibit student rental housing. And this program, as far as I understand it, or this grant, as far as I understand it, is sort of a remnant of an attempt in the past to reduce student housing. But as far as I know, it's only in this neighborhood and would only affect those 19 properties. So that's my answer to your comment. I'm sorry I went on a little bit long, but I've tried to give you a little context and background.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So
Thank you.
And Alan, I'd welcome sort of a broader discussion. I think what you're itching for is a broader discussion about maybe rental properties in the market. That's the sense I get, not so much maybe, and maybe this is a subset. I can see why this would bring those concerns that you have to the fore in your mind. And if I'm wrong about that, let me know. But I'm wondering, it seems like I'd like to hear, and maybe, on a subsequent meeting, if there's a specific point of feedback that you think as a housing commission we ought to adopt to advise council on this particular program, hey, bring it. I'd love to hear it. If you think that your sets of concerns and things that we ought to think about more broadly about the rental housing market is something that we should dig deeper on or discuss, that sounds great too. But let's, let's talk about how to frame that discussion so that we can all come prepared. And, if we need to get some data from Annette and things like that, we can have that robust discussion. Because I have some, personally, concerns about the market, and my motivation is, I'm concerned about people who can't necessarily or don't want to buy a house, and their ability to live in this community, as well as the people who are in a place to buy a home. I don't think all rentals are bad at all. I think that kind of perception about rental properties ebbs and flows in this community. And it's always a place that I think we should talk and wrestle with. So I guess that's what I'm seeing two different things that we might discuss later, either like a specific resolution or something to provide to council on this particular project. I'd be cool, I'd be happy to put that on a subsequent agenda, or maybe a broader discussion about rentals in East Lansing. That would be great too.
I agree with Casey, given that I've lived like in Boston, New York, DC, and other places where rentals and homeowners did coexist. And I just think this issue is, East Lansing struggles with it, unfortunately, so badly. But I don't think it's the time or place right now to like go into a deep discussion and deep dive about it. But I think possibly there is a win-win to this. But we have to kind of get real and get honest about certain issues, certain situations that maybe are unique to East Lansing in this area, and put everything on the table. But I do agree with the new commissioner. People are getting older. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I know, I'm so bad.
Alan. We're just cheating because we
not
can see his name
Alan,
on
the
Zoom.
female. Well,
Janelle,
yes. That our population is aging, whether we like it or not. And, we definitely need housing for all, because people do love this community and they want to live here. So we definitely have to find solutions sooner rather than later. Thank you.
And Janelle, no, I'm wondering, thank you, Jennifer. I guess similar to what I talked about with Alan, I'm wondering if, if we want to consider a specific resolution, maybe at a subsequent meeting that talks about accessibility, and specifically about accessibility in regards to this Chesterfield Hills project.
I would love to do that.
Okay.
Awesome.
So,
Sorry,
okay.
at this time, my concerns were only about the agenda item on 4.1, but I will read the development agreement.
Cool
It's
beans.
Irene.
Yep, Irene.
Hi, sorry. I raised my hand. I don't know if you could see that or
Oh,
not.
sorry.
It's okay.
But
Well,
you
I
never
live
took
in-
your hand down. Your hand's been up for like a half an hour.
No, I did. I lowered it and then I put it back up again. I was wondering if someone would see it. I need to wave it or something. So thank you. You guys are funny. Well, I'm in the Bailey neighborhood, and in our neighborhood, we're 65% rentals. So that is one of the overlays. There's many overlays around the city, and actually it is generated by the people that live there. And I had nothing to do with that myself, but the Bailey Community Association had worked on that for years. And Sally Silver is one of the people who I think she worked on it for like 20 years. And also I think like Annette's department, running all of the different, the inspections and everything. I think East Lansing does a very good job at that. I mean, I did go on 2 inspections with the housing inspectors, and I would encourage anybody on this commission to take advantage of that whenever you can. Of course, now we have to do it socially distanced as well, because really you learn a lot. Because any of those housing rentals, they do get inspected every year, and they pay for that. So that protects all of us. Versus, single family homes, we're not inspected except for when we're built or if we sell it. So I think a lot of things East Lansing does are really good. But of course, there's always room for improvement. And thank you.
Thanks, Irene. I'll try to keep my eyes peeled for your hand. Sorry about that. I think that was my fault. All right. Any other things that commissioners have to say about old business? The Chesterfield Hills conversion proposal at this point. I think we're going to see this item again, but anything else you want to say about it tonight before we move on to the next?
So what's next with this?
Annette, you want to give us I don't know the timeline. Jeanette, do you have more information on that?
Yeah. So council has asked that staff get with the city attorney and start looking at what legal mechanisms that could possibly be looked at and put in place to allow this, if there are some. So we will be doing that. I believe we are scheduled to probably touch base with the city attorney in a couple of weeks, and then we'll go from there. But council was also pretty clear about giving us time. They wanted us to research that and to take the time to do it. So there won't probably be anything that comes back before them until probably at least the end of April, I would think.
Thank you, Annette. Any other Chesterfield items before we go on to new business? Okay, thanks, folks. Let's see. So we'll move on to item number 5.1, rental license data update regarding the number of rental licenses, occupancy, and units in the city of Lansing. Take it away, Annette.
Sorry, didn't hit the unmute right away. So thank you. And the new business, I wanted to just take a few minutes this evening to update you. And I think we've often done this kind of at the beginning of the calendar year. We're a little off here, but to bring you some information about, the rental licenses, where we're at with them, and kind of, I was going to go over again, if I may. Where do we go? Share my screen for just a moment. Also, a reminder about the different types of rental licenses. This commission, you all often have the initial rental licenses come before you, and those are commonly either a class 1, which allows an owner and owner's family to have a roomer, or the class 3, which is set up for a non-owner occupied property and allows an owner to rent to up to 2 unrelated persons or a family. So the commission, I know you all are very familiar with the class 1 and the class 3, but I thought it was worth just having a quick maybe look at what other class licenses there are out there, and then I'll share with you a little bit about numbers about those. So the other rental license that we have in the city that's an owner occupied license is the class 2. And that allows for the owner and owner's family to have 2 or more roomers. Those are what we call legal non-conforming rental licenses, since our zoning does not allow for that type of a license to be a new license under our current zoning at this time. So those licenses have on them how many roomers. In some cases, it may be 2 roomers. In some cases, it may be 3 roomers. I don't think there's any out there beyond that. So this license, we haven't had any of these as an initial, as a new license since late 1997. That's when the zoning ordinances were changed. And that's when those licenses became legal non-conforming licenses. So those are the class 2. So you really don't see those come before you as a body as an initial rental license. However, we do renew them as long as the owners maintain them. So the class 3, clearly you're familiar with. The other is the class 4. Class 4 is the most common rental license in the city. We have over 1,000 of those. And so the class 4s are for dwellings that are non-owner occupied and are licensed for 3 or more unrelated persons or a family to occupy. And again, those licenses are specific. They'll be licensed for 3 unrelated, 4 unrelated, 5 unrelated, and kind of what you think of in our residential neighborhoods commonly, so they're single family houses, could be duplexes, could be a townhouse, could be a condominium, but they would not be, an apartment building. So that's the class 4. And again, that's like the class 2. When the zoning was changed in 1997, those all became legal non-conforming rental licenses for the most part in R1, R2, and R3 zoning districts. And then the last 2 types of licenses, class 5, kept it short, more technical definition in the code, but for brevity is typically what we think of as an apartment building, anywhere, could be a small apartment building, a nice small 4-unit building, or up to some of our newer, very, very large apartment complexes have 1 license for a certain number of occupants and units and occupants. Class 6 is what you think of as a large group style living. And again, for sake of an example, I think it's what many people commonly think of when they see a fraternity house, a sorority, a co-op. There's some other organized groups that have this kind of housing. And then there's some that have this type of licensing, but it is not necessarily occupied by an organized group, just a large number of people sharing that home in kind of that shared way. So that's kind of a brief, just reminder about all of our different rental licenses that we have here in the city. And then I did attach a couple of documents. And I do see where it didn't line up. I do apologize for that. I think when I converted it over, it did not line up very well. So I can email you something that's lines up better. So for example, the first line, class 1, We have 22, that first column, we have 22 class 1 rental licenses in the city. And then the units, 22, they're pretty much all one unit, right? Like a single family house. And the occupancy would be 22. That's the licensed occupancy. I have no idea how big the family may be. So, and then the same with the class 2, there's 13 of those existing in the city. 35 with up to 35 persons in total, because some of them may be licensed for 2 roomers, 3 roomers. So class 3 is 271 of those with 304 units, occupancy of 604. And on it goes. The class 6, I see I did fail to fill in the units. I think we were still working on that document, so I can get that to you. But keep in mind, you know, I give you these numbers as they stand today, and there's always just a little bit of flexibility in those as they change, as maybe, you know, a new license comes on, or maybe someone extinguishes the license for a time being or completely. So that's to give you just kind of a general idea of the number of rental licenses we have in the city. And I ran these numbers, and I should have put another footnote on here. We ran these numbers last summer. However, the class 5s were updated in October of 2020. So the class 5s, so there's 209 licensed apartment type buildings, complexes, I guess I should say, not buildings, with 8,336 comprised of that many units, and for up to the 21,239 occupants, if they're fully occupied too. That's the other thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what we have. That would be the full licensed capacity on that. So perhaps I should stop here for just a moment in case there are questions before I move on to the next one. I'm happy to do that. Did I give the allotted awkward silence time for Zoom meetings? Thank you. And then the second document that I share with you, just kind of this is really brief, and just to give a sense of some of our more recent projects that have I said a residential component. Clearly some of these have more to them, as they have some commercial space in their first floors. So Newman Lofts would be the first one here. Landmark, the Abbott, the Hub, and then we have a couple of new hotels, newer hotels here at the bottom. 1100 Trowbridge is a Marriott, Spring Hill by Marriott out on Trowbridge. So if you are in that area over there, take a look. You'll see that it kind of sits back. So sometimes as residents, I think we don't notice those things, but that's been there since 2019. And the Graduate Hotel, I'm sure all of you have seen because it's, or know its location at least, because it's right here on Abbott Road. And that will be opening, expected to open June of 2021. The Hub, of course, opened in 2019. You'll see that 2019 was a big year for us here in town because we had the Hub, Landmark, and Newman Lofts all opened up. Newman Lofts and Landmark right downtown here, Grand River and Albert area. And then the Hub, for anyone who isn't familiar, is corner of Grand River and Bogue Street area right there. There's a McDonald's down there. I don't think what else is around it, but it's also probably something you're familiar with. So that was just kind of an update on rental licenses, what we have, kind of the beginning of getting some information to you for this year. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Yeah, Annette, Larry, just a quick question on this last chart. Is the column where it says occupancy, is that the number of units or the actual number of occupants in those buildings?
The occupancy is the number of licensed occupancy of the building.
Okay.
So the units is this first column here. So for example, the hub.
Oh, yeah, I see.
347 units and a total occupancy amongst those units of 585. Some of the
Right.
units are smaller, some are bigger.
I see. Yeah, I guess what I was getting at. But those are, we're under occupancy. That is the legally licensed occupancy of those units. It isn't actually the actual occupancy at this time or any time, because, and the only reason I ask is because there's been some, I know some discussion regarding Newman loss and whether whether those units are, so many of those units are occupied or not. And I was just trying to get a sense of that.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that. Very good question. We don't track, we really don't have a way of tracking for the staff, I guess, to track how many units are occupied at any given time. Our best for that kind of information, we always are happy when we see the census come out. That's where we get our best information for, in general, at that point in time, our occupancy levels in the city. But that is the licensed capacity that they have.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
Sure.
Annette, this is Casey. So I notice that under units, landmarks, it says that landmark has 273 units, but its occupancy is only 262.
Oh, yeah.
That is an error on my part.
All right.
Yes, thank you
It
for
seemed a
pointing
little
that
weird.
out.
No, that is what Alice mentioned in
Yep.
her, yep.
I see that completely. And I don't have I would look it up right now and tell you, but I don't have that program up on my computer right now. But I will make that correction and repost to the website for the public for sure, and let you all know also. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So Annette, thanks for explaining all this. And during our council meeting and when we were talking about Chesterfield and just the rental license transfers, it was implied that they wouldn't be transferred to brand new properties, but maybe people that are currently renting who maybe have an extra room that they'd like to rent to. And so I'm wondering if you can confirm that part. And then my other question is, you mentioned we stopped certain licenses after a period of time. Like, do you get calls sometimes from folks who would love to expand their rental license in the house or houses that they rent, but cannot because of those restrictions?
Sure. Yep. So I'll go with the last question first. I do get calls. People will inquire. I would say our landlords that are local and have been with working in the city for a long time don't inquire. They know the ordinances, but I do get inquiries from other folks that maybe are new to the area, and they'll ask, or if they bought something that maybe is a class 3 rental license, it's licensed for 2 unrelated or a family, and it has 3 bedrooms. They'll want to know if they can increase their occupancy. And under our current ordinances, they cannot. So I do get that question, absolutely. Your first question related to moving, my understanding in remembering the council discussion was, I think, the thought and the intent, and I think what the neighbors in the Chesterfield neighborhood were talking about was if there was a house that's already licensed, like for example, a house licensed and it had an occupancy of 3, but there was 4 bedrooms in it, then could one, at least, we have a license, but one of the occupancies out of that license be transferred to that property. So you might be, if you took a house out of the Chesterfield neighborhood, a license for 4, so you have 4 occupants that you're wanting to move. I think my understanding of the discussion was, you know, you would probably be splitting that number up amongst houses because you're going to be hard pressed to find a house where you could add another 4 people to an already licensed property. So it would have to probably get spread out amongst a property. If there are any that exist in that area that would have space, and currently under our zoning laws, it's more than just space. They would have to have the bedroom square footage, whether that be shared bedroom space or not. And then also the parking, meet the parking requirement for adding another person adds another vehicle.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And I will stop sharing if that's okay with everybody, my screen, so we can go back to our traditional Hollywood squares. And if there's questions, any further questions for anyone, I'll stay here for another few seconds.
I don't see any hands. I'm looking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. If you think of another question later or want to, anyone at any time, of course, I always welcome you to send me an email if you go later on, go, oh, and I'll answer it.
So now we can move on to staff reports, unless, well, I guess before I do that, is there any discussion amongst commissioners about the data that Annette shared? And if there's not, we'll move on to staff reports. And I'll give Dana the heads up that in the past, this time of staff reports also has provided an opportunity for our council liaison to say a few words if you choose to. So just a heads up that the mic could be coming to you in a moment if you so choose it. But before we leave item number 5, does anybody have any, beyond questions for Annette, just comments that we want to hear before we move on to 6? Right, I will take silence as an ascension to move to number 6. So we'll move on to staff reports. Annette, you gave a pretty solid new business staff report on that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? No?
I would just say, as typical, and I know you guys probably watch our watch the city website if you would for things coming up in the city. If you haven't visited the market that is in the Marriott garage, it's kind of cool. You can see the pictures of it on our social media to get an idea, see if it's something you're comfortable with. They do, practice social media or social distancing. Everyone does have to wear a mask when you come on down to the garage. It is not this Sunday, I don't believe, but next Sunday will be the next market there. So I encourage you to just keep an eye out for those kinds of things. There's other activities also happening related to the anytime, any place, anywhere, downtown, East Lansing. There's a TikTok for those who TikTok, I don't. There's a TikTok challenge. So, I think our staff in the economic development and planning side have really been trying, and along with some Parks and Rec folks, pulling together to make it appealing for our residents to come on downtown in a safe way, frequent our businesses. So I encourage you to just keep an eye out for those kinds of things continuing, hopefully, as long as we can continue to do so in a safe fashion. And I've talked enough for tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Annette. And Dana, do you have anything for us as liaison to council?
I'll just add to what Annette was saying, just if anyone has those gift cards that they haven't spent yet, to please remember to spend those gift cards. I was able to spend some of mine recently at the new market, Campbell's Market. I think that's the name of it. But anyway, if you haven't, please do so. And we're just trying our best to keep the money coming in for the city of East Lansing and for our businesses.
Thank you. And I'll shout out to, I see you, Irene. I'll shout out to Jolly Pumpkin. I think we've gotten their food like twice. And it's surprised. I'm still in takeout mode myself. And it was surprisingly good for even takeout. Like, fries don't always turn out great when you bring them all the way home. But even their fries were, I opened the box and they were still great. So yeah, spend that cash. All right, Irene.
Okay, yes, I wanted to follow up on what Dana said there. Very good to encourage everyone to spend the money. Campbell's Market, I went there and they have a great breakfast sandwich. I would recommend that. And if you have those gift cards, if you don't spend the money, it's going to expire. And also the businesses don't get the money until you actually use those gift cards. So it's crucial to keep spending the money. We have some money yet to spend. We'll have to see what Jack wants to spend it on. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, before we adjourn, I'll take a point of personal privilege, so to speak, and thank both Alan and Janelle for joining us as new members. I really appreciate your perspectives that are a little different than what we've had in the past. And I hope you keep coming. And I really appreciate your willingness to take on more, especially in the pandemic. So I appreciate that. But also to everyone, thanks so much for taking the time today. With it being so cold, it wasn't so, I didn't want to be outside anyway, right? But I appreciate you taking the time on your Thursday to be here. Any last words from anybody else before we adjourn?
This is Janelle. I am very pleased to be here, and I will try to get my technical difficulty worked out. I changed from Internet Explorer to Edge, and for some reason, the invite link wasn't working, and I couldn't figure it out, but I'll do better next time.
I think you did great, and we'll figure it out together for sure.
Thank you.
And Irene, I still see your hand up. Is that real, or are you just tricking us out?
I didn't realize that I learned tonight that you must lower your hand. Thank you for that help.
I'm just teasing you.
Okay.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much again, and we'll see you next month. Have a great night.
Okay, do you have
is
to motion
adjourned.
to adjourn?
Oh,
No?
sorry. Sure.
That's
Is
okay.
that you?
It's Irene again.
All right.
I'm motioning to
second.
adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thank
Oh, I
you,
know.
everyone.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Bye.
Aye. Any
All right,
opposed, say
bye.
nay.
Stay well.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay
Thanks,
warm.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
There we go. All
I'm gonna leave, Des.
right. Have a good night, Annette.
Thank you.